what is an average or normal price to sales ratio? Because I often quote price to sales ratio with these growth companies just because they don't have earnings to talk about. So it's a good metric to look at. And the answer is that it depends. It depends on the industry. It depends on the growth rate. If you look at some value stocks, like General Motors, for example, trades for less than 1 time sales. And that's a value stock, and it's because it's a relatively low margin business. It's a value stock, not a growth stock. On the other hand, there are some growth stocks that trade for over 100 times sales, and it's completely justified. The way I like to use the price to sales ratio is kind of in combination with the company's growth rate. The higher the company's growth rate, the more of a price to sales ratio it can justify. And I like to look at a few different growth stocks, just look at each one's growth rate, price to sales, and kind of see which one's relatively cheap or expensive. That's one of the components of when I evaluate growth stocks. This coming from the fool's resident value investor, but
yeah, there you go. Well, what's interesting is, and I'm glad we picked up this question, the S&P price to sales ratio is about 2.8. So when we're talking stuff in the double digits in the 20s and 30s, just recognize that's a significant premium to what the overall market is. And really, it doesn't make sense to put an airline like American Airlines, and I don't know what their price to sales ratio is. I suspect it's very low, versus Twilio, which doesn't have any, it doesn't have the capital intensive business that the airline has. So, it doesn't have to, hire mechanics and get spare parts and, buy all these airplanes and maintain them over time. They release software, and immediately that software goes all over the world, and they have really high margins, which allows them to continue to invest in their business. So some of these SaaS companies, their price to sales ratios are going to be at certainly premiums to the market, where my rule of thumb is if you're growing 40% year over year annually, I would hope that your price to sales ratio is less than 40. And that's just my rule of thumb. That's probably an expensive stock, but as you're looking at different stocks, make sure you compare it to their growth rates, and certainly don't look at their cash burn as well. Most of all the companies that we talk about here are pretty solid balance sheet, but you don't want to have them running out of cash in the next 12 or 18 months. That's not a good situation.